Before we enter Sebastio's farm, go ahead and leave your like if you believe the world needs more kindness. Take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any exciting stories like this one. And I really want to know who's on the other side. Comment below which city or state you're listening from today. Pull up a chair, grab a coffee, and come with me on this story. When Sebastio saw the thin wisp of smoke rising among the bamboo groves at the back of his farm, he thought it was hunters invading his land. He grabbed his shotgun and went to investigate. But what he found in that abandoned house would change everything. A terrified woman, a little girl wielding a stick as if it were a sword, and a baby crying from hunger. "Don't turn us in, sir," the woman implored. And right there in that moment, a man who had spent his entire life proving he had worth finally understood what everything he had built was for. "I will take care of you," he said. And with those 5 words, he saved not 3 lives, but 4, including his own. Stay with me until the end, because this story will show you that sometimes God places people hidden in our lands to heal wounds we didn't even know were still bleeding. If you believe in fresh starts, leave a like and come with me. At the end of the 19th century, in isolated regions of Brazil, stories like this were common. Women fleeing arranged marriages, lonely men cultivating land with no one to share the harvest, entire families hiding in abandoned shacks to escape a past that hurt too much to carry. The interior was vast, the laws were slow to arrive, and many people lived in the spaces between right and wrong, just trying to survive one more day. It was in one of these forgotten corners of the map, where the dirt road disappeared between hills covered in dense forest, that Sebastio's farm lay. It wasn't the biggest in the region, but it was prosperous, well-kept, with sturdy fences, fat cattle grazing peacefully, and a solid wooden house that he had helped build plank by plank. Sebastio was 43 years old, with the broad shoulders of someone who had carried weight his whole life, calloused hands, a face marked by the sun and by an ancient sadness that hid behind a dry way of speaking. He never married, never wanted company, and lived alone in that green immensity, like someone serving a life sentence. His routine was always the same. Wake up before the rooster crowed, drink strong black coffee with stale bread, then go out for the heavy labor in the fields. Fixing fences, branding calves, plowing the earth, planting corn, harvesting what grew, selling what was left in the village. He would return at dusk, sweaty, covered in dust, take a bath in a basin in the back room, eat dinner alone staring at the wall, and go to bed early, because the next day everything would start all over again, just the same. The house, despite being large, echoed with emptiness. It had good furniture, a plentiful table, a full pantry, but it lacked the main thing. Was there life inside those walls? There was no laughter of children running in the yard. There was no smell of cake baking in the oven. There was no woman's voice calling from the kitchen. There was no one waiting for him to return. It was like living inside a well-preserved museum, but without a soul. And Sebastio knew this, but pretended he didn't. Because admitting the loneliness was accepting that perhaps he had wasted all those years proving a point to people who didn't even care anymore. On that Thursday morning, the sky dawned clear with that deep blue that only the countryside has, and the air was fresh, smelling of earth wet from the night's dew. Sebastio followed the path that bordered the northern limit of the property, where the bamboo groves grew dense and closed, creating almost a green wall that separated his lands from the virgin forests. It was a part he rarely visited, as there was no pasture or plantation there, only an old drover's house that he kept standing out of stubbornness, but which had been abandoned for years. In the old days, when mule trains crossed the region carrying goods from one side to the other, the drovers would stop there to rest, eat, and sleep for a night before continuing their journey. But times changed, routes changed, and the house was forgotten, swallowed by the brush, with glassless windows, the door creaking loose on rusty hinges, and the roof with tiles missing here and there. That was why Sebastio found it strange when he saw, among the treetops, a thin line of smoke rising slowly to the sky. Smoke meant fire, and fire meant people. He felt a tightness in his chest, half irritation, half curiosity. Who would have the courage to invade his lands and settle there as if they owned it? Illegal hunters, army deserters, cattle thieves hiding and waiting for nightfall to attack. He trotted back to the house, grabbed a shotgun, checked if it was loaded, and returned determined to expel whoever was there. The path to the house was covered in tall grass and low branches that scratched his arms. When he finally got close enough to see the building, Sebastião stopped and observed. The door was closed, but there were clear signs of recent occupation. Clothes hanging on a string tied between two trees, a tin bucket next to the small well in the back, firewood piled near the entrance. Someone had cleaned the yard around it, swept the dry leaves, even planted a few kale stalks in a makeshift little garden bed beside the house. Sebastião approached slowly, shotgun firm in his hands, but not pointing anywhere yet. He stopped a few meters from the door and shouted in a deep, authoritative voice, "Who is in there? Come out now with your hands where I can see them." There was a tense silence. Then the sound of furniture being dragged in a hurry, rushed footsteps, a muffled baby's cry. The door creaked open, and what Sebastião saw made the anger he was feeling wither instantly. In the doorway, holding a small baby against her chest with one arm and pushing a girl of about 9 years old behind her with the other, stood a young woman, far too thin, with a pale face of someone who hadn't eaten properly in a long time, brown eyes wide with pure panic. Her dress was simple, patched in several places, dirty from the road and stove soot. The baby whimpered softly, wrapped in a cloth that must have once been white but was now gray from so much use. And the girl was what hurt the most.
"Please, sir, deu uma Spock, her voice trembling bate firme. Don't turn us in. I beg you. We have no very to go. We have no one. If you send us away, we will die on the road." Sebastião Lavered the shotgun slowly, without taking his eyes off the scene in front of him. He felt something move deep in his chest. Something unseen and forgotten. Perhaps compassion, perhaps recognition. "Who are you, mine?" he asked, trying to keep his tone serious, but unable to completely hide the concern that was beginning to grow. "My name is Celina," she answered quickly. "These are my daughters, Rosa and Mariana. We are running away from something very bad, sir. We ended up here by accident. I thought the house was abandoned, that no one would care. It did it up, I cleaned it, I didn't break anything. We just needed a roof. That's all. Is here we won't be any trouble." Her voice was getting more desperate with every word. "If you want, I'll work, I'll cook, I'll wash, I'll do whatever is needed. Just don't send us away, for the love of God." Sebastião looked around, saw the poverty of those 3 lives summarized in out a dozen bundles of cloth tied with string, a old pot near the makeshift a doormat on the floor serving as a bed. He looked again at the baby whimpering, at the girl who still held the stick with trembling little hands, at the woman who stared at him with a mixture of wounded pride and pure pleading. And suddenly, without Kit understanding why, Sebastião remembered himself at 19, kicked out of the house by his own father, walking the roads with no destination, sleeping under trees, hungry, cold, angry, but mainly with a loneliness that hurt more than any physical wound. He remembered the helplessness, the feeling of having one in the whole world who would care if he died right there, thrown by the roadside like a stray animal. And something inside him, something that had been locked and rusting for years, gave way. "Put down that stick, girl," he said with a softer voice, looking at Mariana. "I'm not going to hurt anyone here." The girl hesitated, looked at her mother asking for silent permission. Celina nodded slowly and Mariana lavered her arm, but didn't drop the stick. Sebastião took a step forward slowly, like someone approaching a frightened animal. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Celina pressed her lips together, pride fighting with necessity, but ended up nodding. "It's been 2 days since we only ate boiled cassava and a handful of toasted corn." Sebastião felt his chest tighten. He closed his eyes for a second, making a decision he knew would change everything, but which he could ignore could avoid regardless. When he opened his eyes again, he said firmly, "Gather your things. You are going to the main house with me. There is real food there, real beds, clean water." Celina widened her eyes incredulous. "Are you serious, sir?" Sebastião nodded. "Que And it is not a favor, it is not charity. Retook a deep breath. It is the right thing to do. Celina began to cry. Silent tears that ran down her dirt face as she squeezed Rosa against her chest. The girl also started to cry, but now it was a cry of relief, no longer of fear. Sebastião turned his back to give them time to compose themselves and spoke over his shoulder. I'll wait out here. When you are ready, follow me and don't worry about anything. No one will hurt you while you are under my roof. He heard the sound of movement inside, things being uttered in a muffled sobs. While revived, Sebastião looked at the blue sky, at the trees around, at the smoke still rising till from the chimney, and, for the first time in over 20 years, felt that perhaps, just perhaps, he had found a purpose greater than simply proving to ghosts of the past that he had worth. Perhaps a man's worth was not in the size of the farm he built, but in the size of the heart he could still keep alive under all that hard shell. Minutes later, Celina came out of the house carrying Rosa in her arms and pulling Mariana by the hand. They had two cloth bundles hanging from their shoulders. It was everything they owned in the world. Sebastião started walking in front, opening a path through the brush, and they followed him in silence. The walk to the main house took about 20 minutes. When the building finally appeared among the trees, solid, with a spacious porch and a well-kept roof, Celina let out a low sigh of admiration mixed with fear. Mariana squeezed her mother's hand together. Sebastião went up the porch steps and opened the door, signaling for them to enter. Come on, he said, this house is too big for just one man. There are spare rooms, there is food in the pantry, there is space for everyone. Celina entered slowly, like someone stepping on sacred ground, looking around at the dark wood furniture, the large table, the pots hanging on the kitchen wall, at everything that represented a life she had never had. Sebastião showed them a room in the back, simple but clean, with a double bed covered by a patchwork quilt and a window overlooking the orchard. This can be yours, he said. It has a firm mattress, blankets if the night gets cold, and the door locks from the inside if you want privacy. Celina placed Rosa on the bed carefully, as if she were afraid everything would disappear if she made a sudden movement. Mariana sat in the corner, still clutching the stick, eyes wide at everything. Sebastião left, returned with a basin of clean water, a piece of soap, and a towel. You can wash up change clothes if you have them. Then come to the kitchen. I'll prepare something for us to eat. Celina held the basin as if it were treasure. Thank you, sir, she murmured. Thank you from my heart. He nodded, left, and closed the door, leaving them alone. He leaned against the alva wall for a moment, breathing deeply, trying to understand what he had just done. He had just opened the door of his house, of his life, to three complete strangers. He didn't know where they came from, didn't know what they were running from, didn't know if they would stay a week or a month. But he knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same again.
In the kitchen, Sebastião prepared rice, beans, fried some eggs, cut thick slices of homemade bread, warmed up fresh milk from the morning milking. When everything was ready, he called them. Celina appeared with the girls, now with clean faces, showing more delicate features. Mariana's hair combed back with water, Rosa quiet in her mother's lap. They sat at the table, a bit awkward, waiting for permission. Eat as much as you like, Sebastião said, serving the plates. There's more in the pot if you need it. Celina began to eat slowly. Every forkful seemed to hurt, it was so good, as if her body had forgotten what real food was. Mariana attacked the bread with hunger accumulated over days, but still looked at Sebastião sideways, suspicious. Rosa nursed warm milk that Celina gave her with a small spoon, and with each little sip, she seemed to get calmer. Sebastião ate in silence, observing the three, and felt something strange settle in his chest. The table wasn't empty anymore, the house wasn't silent anymore, and he, for the first time in so long, didn't feel completely alone. After the meal, Celina insisted on washing the dishes. Sebastião let her, seeing she needed to feel she was contributing in some way, that she wasn't just dead weight. While she washed and Mariana dried the plates with a cloth, He stayed on the porch smoking his straw cigarette, thinking about everything and nothing at the same time. The sun was starting to set, dyeing the sky orange and pink. The wind brought the smell of the bush and good earth, and from inside the house came the sound of female voices, soft but present, and the gentle cry of a baby being lulled. Sebastião closed his eyes and let those sounds in, filling the empty spaces he had gotten used to ignoring. When Celina finished and came to the porch, carrying Rosa already asleep in her arms, she stopped beside him and said softly, "I don't know what you want in exchange for all this, sir, but I need to know. I don't want illusions, I don't want lies." Sebastião looked at her, saw the rightful suspicion in her eyes, the motherly protection that has already learned nothing is free in this world. "I don't want anything in return," he answered sincerely. "I'm not that kind of man. You can stay here for as long as you need, with respect, with dignity. When you want to leave, leave. Until then, consider this house as your shelter too." Celina studied his face, looking for a lie, looking for ulterior motives. She didn't find any. She only found tiredness, loneliness, and a kindness somewhat rusty, but still alive. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You don't even know us." Sebastião took a while to answer. When he answered, his voice came out hoarse, loaded with a truth he himself was discovering in that moment. "Because someone one day should have done this for me when I needed it and no one did. I know what it is to be lost with nowhere to go, with no one caring if you wake up the next day or not." He looked at Rosa sleeping. "And I don't want these children to feel that. So, if I can help, I will help. Simple as that." Celina felt the tears rising again, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope slowly being reborn. "Thank you," she whispered. "We won't be any trouble, I promise." Sebastião nodded. "I know. Now go rest. Tomorrow we'll talk more. The day has been long for everyone." Celina went in with Rosa, taking Mariana by the hand. Sebastião stayed on the porch until the night completely swallowed the day. And when he finally went in, locked the door, blew out the lamps, and went to bed, he felt for the first time in years that the house wasn't dead. It was breathing again. And he, without knowing exactly how or when, had just made the most important decision of his life. He had said without words yet, but with acts, "I will take care of you." The first few days were of careful silence, the kind where everyone measures the other, without wanting to seem like they are measuring. Celina woke up before the sun and prepared coffee on the wood stove, but didn't serve herself until Sebastião arrived from milking. Mariana circled the house like a skittish cat, always watching, always ready to grab her little sister and run if something seemed wrong. The baby Rosa cried little, as if she had learned early on that noise attracts danger. And Sebastião, he followed his usual routine, but now returned home with a different tightness in his chest, half afraid of finding the house empty, half afraid of getting too used to it being full. At the first breakfasts, conversations were short, practically non-existent. Sebastião ate looking at his plate. Celina fed Rosa in her lap. Mariana chewed slowly, never taking her eyes off the man sitting at the head of the table. It was as if everyone was learning a new dance, trying not to step on each other's feet. But it was on the fourth day that something changed. Sebastião returned from the pasture earlier than usual, carrying a cloth bundle under his arm. He found Mariana sitting alone on the porch, poking the dirt with a stick, drawing what looked like a house. She looked at him sideways, tense. He stopped a few steps away, respecting her space, like someone approaching a wounded animal. "I picked this up in the village this morning," he said in a deep, paused voice. "Thought you might like it." He held out the bundle. Mariana looked at the package as if it were a trap. She didn't move. Sebastião placed the bundle on the ground, halfway between them, and stepped away. "You can open it whenever you want," he said simply, and went into the house. Celina, who was watching everything from the kitchen window with Rosa on her hip, felt her throat tighten. That man knew things without anyone needing to explain. Hours later, when the sun was already setting and painting the sky orange and purple, Sebastião returned to the porch to smoke his end-of-day straw cigarette. The bundle was no longer where he had left it. He looked around discreetly and saw Mariana sitting under the mango tree in the yard with something in her lap. She was holding a simple rag doll, made with scraps and buttons for eyes, but with a little dress sewn with care by the village seamstress. The girl squeezed the doll against her chest, like someone embracing a rare treasure, and, for the first time since she arrived, she had something resembling a smile on her lips. Sebastião quickly looked away so as not to embarrass her, but inside, he felt something warm rise from his stomach to his throat. It was the feeling of being needed, of having made a difference, however small, in someone's life. How many years had it been since he felt that? That night, on the porch, Sebastião told Celina about his past, about how his father wanted to force him to marry Colonel Jacinto's daughter to merge lands. Love is for little women and vagabond poets, his father had said. Sebastião refused and was expelled, swearing to build something greater. His father died without ever forgiving him, and Sebastião lived only to work and prove his worth, accumulating wealth, but living in emptiness. Celina, touched, brought him coffee and covered his shoulders. Then she told her story. "I was sold as if I were a sack of flour," she revealed. Her brother gave her in marriage to a widowed and violent colonel to pay off gambling debts. Her husband treated her like property and hated his daughters for being female. When he threatened to give Mariana to a henchman as payment, Celina fled in the middle of the night. "God willing, we will stay hidden until he gives up looking," she said. Sebastião, with a hoarse voice, confessed that he too had been expelled by his family and understood the pain of rejection. "Maybe that's why, when I saw you three in that house, I couldn't send you away. I saw in you what I once was. Someone rejected, but still standing." The routine continued, and the house came to life, but on the 12th day, peace was shattered. The warehouse owner in the village warned Sebastião that henchmen of Celina's husband were prowling the region, offering money for information. Sebastião rushed back to the farm. Upon telling Celina, he saw the panic in her eyes. "He won't give up. I'd rather die than go back." Sebastião made a decision. He would not allow them to take that family. He proposed the only solution the local law would respect: marriage. "If you marry me on paper, the old marriage can be annulled. That is the law that counts around here. A married woman belongs to her husband, not the ex." Celina, crying, accepted, not only out of fear, but because of the dignity with which she had been treated. Mariana also begged not to go back. The next day, Sebastião went to the village and convinced the justice of the peace, Mr. Teofilo, to perform the marriage that same afternoon, explaining the urgency to protect Celina. He bought a new dress for her and a blue ribbon for Mariana. Back at the farm, he gave them the gifts. Celina dressed, feeling like a person again. They went to the village and were legally married. On the way back, already at dusk, they were surrounded on the road by 3 armed henchmen. The leader demanded the fugitive woman. Sebastião did not back down. "This woman here is no longer a fugitive. She is my wife. We got married today." He showed the official document. "The law is clear. A married woman belongs to her husband. If the colonel wants to argue, let him come talk to me." Faced with his firmness and the document, the henchman retreated and left. Celina cried with relief. Mariana hugged Sebastião and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." The word hit Sebastião like a healing punch. They returned home, now a real family. That night, they talked in front of the fireplace. Celina said she knew the marriage was for protection and would not demand love. Sebastião corrected her. "When I said I do, it was from the heart. It wasn't just protection, it was a choice. A choice to build a family with you." They decided to try to be happy together. Sebastião kept the marriage certificate as his most precious possession. Years passed, transforming the agreement into true love. They had children together, Miguel, Clara, and Pedro. The house filled with life and joy. Sebastião grew old working happily, knowing his value lay not in the land, but in his family. When old age arrived and his health failed, Sebastião passed the reins of the farm to Miguel. On an autumn afternoon, he felt his time had come. Surrounded by his wife, children, and grandchildren, he made his final speech. A man's worth is not in the size of his land, but in the love he plants. I was rich because of you. He thanked Celina for saving him from loneliness and his children for giving meaning to his life. He asked only that if they saw someone lost, they should open the door as he did. He died in peace, holding Celina's hand. The burial was simple, like everything in his life. He was buried under the big mango tree, at the back of the farm, the place he liked most to sit and rest after work. Celina had engraved on the wooden cross, Sebastião Augusto da Silva, a good man who opened the door when the world said to close it. Many people came from the village, from neighboring farms, people he had helped over the years, without ever charging anything, without ever making a fuss. And each one had a story to tell, a good memory, proof that that man had gone through life, making a difference. Celina lived another 15 years after Sebastião's death. She continued on the farm, surrounded by children and grandchildren, tending the vegetable garden, preparing the recipes he liked, telling stories about the day they met, about the hasty marriage, about the henchman on the road, about every small miracle they built together. She never remarried. She said she had already had the love of her life and that it would be greed to want more. When it was time for her to leave too, she asked to be buried next to Sebastião, under the same mango tree. And so it was done. The two crosses stood side by side, silent witnesses of a love that began out of necessity, but became a choice, that was born of fear, but grew in trust, that was sealed on paper, but lived day to day with truth. Years passed, decades turned, and the farm remained in the family's hands. Miguel took over, then passed it to his children, who passed it to their children. And so the chain remained firm, unbreakable. Many, many years later, when the century had already turned and the world had changed its face, the farm was still standing. It was no longer isolated as before. The dirt road had become asphalt. The village had grown into a small town. But the main house, the wooden one that Sebastião helped build, remained preserved. The family decided to keep it as it was, as a memorial, as a reminder of where it all began. And every year, on the anniversary of Sebastião's death, everyone gathered there. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, a crowd of people who existed because one day a lonely man decided not to expel 3 frightened people from his land. Mariana, already old, with hair all white but eyes still lively, was the one who always told the story to the younger ones. She would sit on the porch surrounded by curious children and always start the same way. It all began with a thin smoke rising among the bamboo groves. And she told every detail, the stick in her hand, her mother's fear, the kindness of the man who could have sent them away but chose to welcome them, the marriage of protection that became true love, the henchman on the road, the happy years, the legacy left behind. The children listened fascinated, asking questions, wanting to know more. And Mariana answered everything with patience, because she knew that story wasn't just about the past, it was about the future. It was also about teaching that family isn't just blood, it's choice. It's about showing that a single act of kindness can change not one life, but entire generations. It was about proving that it's worth opening the door, even when the world says to lock it. When she finished telling it, there was always someone asking, "Grandma Mariana, do you still remember the day you called him Dad for the first time?" And she would smile, her eyes tearing up. "I remember it like it was yesterday, my child. I remember the shock I myself felt when the word came out, but I remember even more the way he looked at me afterwards, as if I had given him the most valuable gift in the world." And it was true because she had. She had given him the chance to be a father, to be needed, to be loved. She had given purpose to a life that was empty. She had given family to someone who thought he would die alone. On the living room wall, framed and protected by glass, was still the original marriage document, yellowed by time, with the ink already half faded, but still legible. The children liked to look at the signatures, imagine what that day was like, the nervousness, the hope, the love being born. And next to the document, an old photograph taken years after the wedding, when a traveling photographer passed through the region. In it, Sebastião and Celina appear serious, as was the custom at the time, but if you look closely, you can see in the corner of his mouth an almost smile, and in her hand, resting on his shoulder, an intimacy that the formal pose cannot hide. Behind them, Mariana, Rosa, and Miguel as children, and beside them the rest of the family that was yet to come. That photo was more than a record. It was proof that miracles happen, that fresh starts are possible, that true love doesn't need a perfect beginning. It just needs hearts willing to try. And today, while you listen to me, while this story reaches your ears through time and distance, I want to ask you some questions that won't leave me alone. How many blessings have you confused with invasions? How many times has someone appeared in your life needing help, and you thought first of the complications, the problems, the risks, before thinking of the opportunity to do good? How many doors have you locked out of fear, out of tiredness, out of thinking you already had too many problems of your own to carry someone else's? Sebastião could have expelled that family. He had every right. It was his land, his house, his life. But he chose differently. He chose to see beyond the smoke, beyond the fear, beyond his own loneliness. And in doing so, he didn't save 3 lives, he saved 4. Because he was also dying inside, he just didn't know it yet. He was drowning in silence, in well-made fences and fat cattle, but with no one to share it with. And when he opened that door, when he said, "I will take care of you," he was actually saying, "Please, let me take care of someone. Let me be necessary again. Let me have a reason to wake up tomorrow." Sebastião lived 43 years trying to prove his worth to a father who rejected him. He spent entire decades building wealth to show he was worth something. But it was only when he stopped proving and started loving that he discovered who he really was. He discovered that his worth was not in hectares of land, but in a plentiful table surrounded by family. It wasn't in the size of the herd, but in the size of the heart, which was still capable of opening. It wasn't in beating his father in an imaginary competition, but in being the father he himself never had. And that, my friend, is a lesson that we sometimes take a lifetime to learn, or worse, never learn. We spend so much time trying to prove, impress, win, that we forget to simply love, forget to open the door, forget to say, "I will take care of you," to those who need to hear it. And in the end, when life is ending, it's not the fences we built that matter, it's the hugs we gave. It's not how much we gathered, it's how much we shared. If this story touched your heart in some way, if it made you rethink a door that has been locked for too long, if it brought back a memory of a fresh start in your own life, or of someone who was your Sebastião in a difficult moment, I ask you, share this with someone who needs to hear that it is never too late to start over. That family is a choice. That true love can be born in the most unexpected ways. And tell me, because I really want to know, have you ever been rejected by those who should love you? And more importantly, did you let that harden you, or did it teach you to love differently? Have you ever opened the door for someone the world told you to leave outside? Because in the end, the greatest revenge against those who rejected you is not material success. It is the happiness built with those you chose to call family. It is looking back and seeing not what you lost, but what you gained by opening your heart again. And let me tell you one last thing before I finish. If you are going through a difficult moment now, if you are feeling rejected, alone, thinking there is no place in the world for you, remember this story. Remember that Celina was running away, terrified, with nowhere to go, sleeping in an abandoned house, thinking she was going to die on the road with her daughters. And suddenly a smoke appeared, a man appeared, an open door appeared. Remember that Sebastião was empty inside, building wealth but dying of loneliness, thinking he would end his life without ever having been truly loved. And suddenly a family appeared hidden in his lands. A chance to start over appeared. God has a very particular way of bringing broken people together so they can heal together. He doesn't always send the prince on the white horse or the fairy godmother with a magic wand. Sometimes he sends a thin smoke among the bamboo groves. Sometimes he sends someone desperate knocking on your door. Sometimes he uses what the world calls a problem to give you the solution you didn't even know you were looking for. So, don't give up, don't lock your heart, don't harden to the point of not recognizing the blessing when it comes disguised, because your story is still being written and the best chapter might be right there, waiting for you to have the courage to turn the page and say yes to the unexpected. If this story touched your heart, don't leave without giving it a like. It helps our message reach those who need hope. If you're not yet part of our family, click the subscribe button and activate the bell. And if you didn't say it at the beginning, tell me now. Where did you see the story? Share this video with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to start over. God bless you, and until next time.